this Judaism Practices revision video about dietary laws. Welcome to the kosher kitchen. In a Jewish kitchen, you will find many things that are familiar to a regular kitchen. However, there may be some subtle differences. The first one may be the sink. There may be two sinks. Separate sinks for washing dishes and preparing foods are recommended, one designated as meat and the other as dairy. Countertops or work surfaces. Jews will designate separate countertops or work areas for meat and dairy. If one area must be used for both, separate coverings must be used. Tables. A table can be used at different times for meat and dairy. If one uses different tablecloths or placemats, a new table or a table surface that was koshered can be used for one category, and a tablecloth or placemat used for the other. Fridges and freezers. These may be used for all food types. However, separate areas should be designated for meat and dairy foods to prevent leakage onto other foods. You might think that sounds like common sense. If dairy is kept on a shelf inside the refrigerator, one should cover the shelf with aluminium foil or a plastic liner. The stovetop, or the hob. Where heat is involved, the kosher laws concerning the accidental mixture of meat and dairy foods become much more complex. Therefore, strict precautions are taken concerning the use of the stove and the oven for meat and dairy products. The ideal setup in the kosher kitchen is to have two separate ovens or hobs. A practical alternative is to use a full-sized range cooker for meat and a portable gas or electric range to cook dairy. Where one stove is used, separate burners designated for milk or meat are preferable. If this is not possible, extra care must be taken to keep the burners very clean. It's best to avoid cooking both types of food at the same time, since the steam or food from one pot might splatter or escape into another, creating a serious kosher issue regarding the food and the pots involved. When it comes to small appliances in the kitchen, in order for it to be used for more than one food type, meat or dairy, an electric mixer, blender or grinder must have separate attachments, but they may share a single motor. Even when using separate attachments, the machine must be cleaned well on all sides after each use. Dishwashers. It's preferable in a Jewish household for a dishwasher to be designated for the exclusive use of meat or dairy. Kosher is the word that covers things that meet Jewish religious requirements, and it's used mostly in describing the food laws and to indicate which foods are edible. The food laws are a good way to keep Jewish people as a distinct group, God's way of separating them from others as the chosen people. Where do the food rules come from? The key sections of the Torah are Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, which explain the animals that can be eaten, and the animals which are unclean and cannot be eaten, or trefah. It says you shall not eat any abomination. These are the animals that you may eat: ox, lamb, and kid, gazelle, deer, and antelope, ibex, bison, giraffe, and every animal that has a split hoof and has a hoof cloven into two hoof sections, and Jews could, among the animals that you may eat. These you may eat of all that are in the waters, all that have fins and scales you may eat. If the kosher animals are not ritually slaughtered, their meat is unclean, making it not kosher. Also, there are parts of kosher animals that are not to be eaten. For example, the internal fat of cattle, lamb, and goat. The meat must be clean of blood. The sciatic sinew, which runs down the spine and the leg, must also be removed. All fruit, vegetables, and pulses can be eaten, and with meat or milk because they are neutral, or parev. However, they should have been washed and checked for bugs and insects, which are not kosher. Milk and milk products are fine to eat, but there are rules about combining these with meat. Deuteronomy 14 states, "You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk." Observing dietary laws is very deep-rooted in Judaism. Many Jews keep a dietary law very carefully, others loosely, and some do not keep it at all. However, all or at least are aware of it. This is perhaps beyond all other factors has prevented the Jews from being assimilated to other nations. And considering the Jews have usually lives in non-Jewish countries, throughout their history, it is to be respected that dietary laws train people to master their appetites, which is important when you think that food is a limited resource, especially meat. Trofar is the word used to describe food which is banned, forbidden under Jewish law. So some of the things you cannot eat: a pig, because it has a split hoof but does not chew the cud. It's unclean for you. You shall neither eat of the flesh nor touch their carcass. These you may eat of all that are in the waters, all that have fish and scales you may eat, but whatever does not have fish, scales, or fins, you shall not eat, and is unclean for you. So these include things like prawns and lobster. The white vulture, the black vulture, and the kite after its species, and every raven after its species, and the ostrich and the owl and the gull, the hawk after its species, the falcon and the ibis and the bat, the pelican, the magpie, the stork, the heron, and its species. Every flying insect is unclean for you, and may not be eaten. You may eat any clean fowl. You shall not eat any carcass. You may give it to the stranger who is in your cities, that he may eat it, or may sell it to a foreigner, for you are the holy people. Ritual slaughter. Any meat that a Jew cooks and consumes must have come from an animal which, 1, is allowed by Scripture, making it kosher, and 2, has been ritually slaughtered. The animal has to be slaughtered by a sachet. This is a qualified person under kosher rules that is allowed to carry out the slaughter. Through a quick, deep stroke across the neck with a perfectly sharp blade. This leads to rapid blood loss and death. It's recognized as the most humane way to kill animals. A sachet is not only trained to be a butcher, he should also be recognized as a good man and should be well trained in Jewish law. Kosher butchers are regularly checked by the Bet Din to ensure that they are observing kosher rules at all times. They receive a certification so that their customers can be sure that they are keeping the kosher laws. According to Leviticus, the blood is the life of the animal and is forbidden to Jews. So the sachet will have removed most of the blood from the meat by the way that they've slaughtered the animal. The remaining blood is removed by one of 3 processes. The first one is broiling, the second is soaking, and the third is salting. Each one of these processes takes time. This has to be done within 72 hours of the slaughter. It's most common to buy meat that has already gone through one of these 3 processes. Milk and meat. The Torah commands in 3 places to not boil a kid in its mother's milk, which is explained by the Talmud to mean no eating, no cooking, no benefiting from a mixture of meat and milk. For Jewish people, this has meant not eating milk and meat products in the same meal, or within 6 hours of each other, though this is reduced to 3 hours for meat after milk by many Jews. Historically, we know the Canaanite people ate meat and milk in one of their rituals, so this may be why Jews were not allowed to. It clearly distinguished the Jews from other people. There is also a sense of compassion. To have a mother seeing her child, or vice versa, being killed or cooked would be cruel. This assigns dignity and sanctity to the lives of both. There are many non-milk replacement products now which make it easy to feed a mixed group of people in the same meals. Many commercial businesses make good use of these products, for example, using a creamer in coffee and not milk. Jewish cuisine. There are lengthy traditions in Jewish cooking. Two distinct cultures exist in the food of Ashkenazi, which is Orthodox Northeastern European. Their food is based around stews. And the Sephardi, from Spain and the Mediterranean, which has a meze culture. Taking it further, have a go at answering any of these questions. Alternatively, you might want to have a go at producing a kosher restaurant menu for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.